up sometimes.
Lyndon, before we start, I've got another meeting at Pwrpas 4 I've got to go to. Is that okay?
Okay, Bev, yeah, thanks. One of the great beauties of Teams is you can whip from one to the other, actually, which is great without having to jump in the car and drive through the traffic. Well, shall we kick off? It is 4 o'clock, and I'm sure other people will join us as we're going along. Could I welcome everybody to our meeting, and in particular reference to Jen, the cabinet member who joins us, and which is always good news, and also to Robert Smith, Councillor Robert Smith, who is joining us today for this session. And Robert chairs the Education Policy Development Committee, which I sit on. So welcome, Robert. Always good to see you. As you know.
Thank you for the welcome.
Yeah, great. Well, could I ask, are there any apologies?
There've been no apologies today, but I'll do a roll call if that's okay.
Great. Could you do that now? Thank you.
Yes, if I call out your name, if you could just say present. I'll start with panel members. Councillors Lyndon Jones.
Yes.
Cyril Anderson.
Present.
Mike Day.
Here.
Linda James.
Present.
Linda Tyler Lloyd. David Halliwell.
Present.
Miles Langstone.
Present.
Beverly Hopkins.
Present.
Mike Dirk.
Present.
Stephen Gallagher.
Yes, present.
Sue Jones. Dave Anderson Thomas. Alexander Roberts. And we have invited other people. We have Robert Smith.
Present.
Councillor Jennifer Rayner, Cabinet Member.
Present.
Helen Morgan-Rees.
Present.
We also have Nick Brazil from Gower College.
Present.
Helen Burgham from Bishop Gore School.
Present.
Chris Rees, Leader of Learning Digital Competence.
Present.
David Bowden, 14 to 19 Education Officer.
Present.
Beth Titley, Careers Office.
Present.
Diane Evans from ERU. And Judith James from Swansea University. They may come yet. There we are. That's everybody, I think.
We can't hear you, Lyndon. You're muted.
Yeah, muted myself. We'll mute everybody. Can you do that, Michelle?
Yeah.
And then come in if you need to come in. So welcome to everyone. Are there any disclosures of personal and prejudicial interests?
Yes.
Yes, for me, Lyndon. Just as a member of the Corporation Board of Gower College, Swansea, and Nick Brazil is here today.
And for me, Chair.
Any others?
Yeah, Councillor Mike Dirk. I'm a member of staff at University of St David.
Okay.
Yes, Chair. Miles Langstone, sit on the Swansea University Court. I think that could be a personal.
Okay, great. Thanks. If there aren't any others, there's obviously a prohibition of whip votes and declaration of party whips. Okay. The next item on the agenda is letters and minutes. These obviously have been circulated. Any comments, any points anybody would like to raise? Okay, great. Sorry, Miles.
So sorry for the minutes for the previous meeting. No.
All right, sorry. There we are. Okay, great, fine, thanks. Could I have a proposal that the minutes are accepted?
Opposed. Mike Day.
Okay, thanks. And the seconder? Anyone there? Yeah, Miles Langston. Okay, great. Thanks very much. The next item on the agenda, we're racing through this, number 5. I think the next couple of points will take a bit longer, but number 5, are there any public questions, Michelle? You're muted. You're muted, Michelle.
I think she's frozen out, not muted.
Sorry, wouldn't unmute.
Right.
No, we've had no public questions.
Okay, great. Well, the next item on the agenda is the...
Can I just excuse you a minute, please? I was late joining the meeting. And disclosures, I have a son working in the authority. Sorry, Lyndon, I couldn't get in.
That's okay, fine, thanks. That's noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item then is the Swansea Skills Partnership. And I understand that the Interim Director of Education, Helen Morgan-Rees, is going to give a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If you bear with me.
Thank you, Helen, and thanks for coming along again. We appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to try and share my screen with you. Hopefully it'll be successful. Just a short presentation from me, just I think about 6 slides in total. So just loading it up now. Can somebody indicate if it's on screen for you?
On screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So we'll start at the beginning. So thank you everybody for the opportunity really of coming here today to share with you the work of the Swansea Skills Partnership. So as we know, the Swansea Skills Partnership started life about 2 years ago. So if I take you to the first slide, just to give you a little flavour really of the history, the background and how it started. So there was a cabinet report back in June 2018 that emanated from the Policy Development Committee for that municipal year that looked really at the opportunities that the Swansea Bay City deal afforded for the future. So the work of that policy was very much about skills and development of our learners here in Swansea and how it would mark really the future in terms of Swansea Bay City deal. So that Policy Development Committee took a report to Cabinet, and the whole point of the report was that Cabinet would recommend that here in Swansea we would have a robust local arrangement for partnership that would feed into other regional partnerships. So that was the premise and the start of Swansea's Skill Partnership, which is known fondly as PISA, Partneriaeth Sgiliau Abertawe. So the purpose of having such a partnership was clear from the start, really, following that cabinet report. So there was a desire really to promote and develop Swansea as a learning city and to be the best in the UK in that respect. There was also a keen desire to promote and develop Swansea as a learning city by aligning providers with a shared vision and values around that. And at inception, there was also a desire to develop a local action plan to promote and develop Swansea as a learning city to inspire children and young people. So much of the work of that group really of Policy Development Committee members at the time and officers at the time, and I'm keen to stress that because we have had a significant change of personnel since 2018, but there was a keen desire to have the learning city at the core of the Swansea Skill Partnership. So the other purposes that were noted at that time were that the partnership was to develop a roadmap for skills or the learning pathway to reinforce the messages about agreement and collaboration at all levels in education. So these are quite lofty ambitions really, looking back at them now. Another purpose was to identify and further develop cohesive opportunities for Swansea learners. And indeed, on reflection, that is quite a broad spectrum, really, of opportunities to work within a partnership. And final slide on the purpose of the partnership was that it would monitor and evaluate progress against the local action plan, and also ensure appropriate linkage with the regional learning and skills partnership action plan. There was also a desire initially to develop careers advice, including apprenticeships and work-based learning, and expand the focus to include Key Stage 3 and primary pupils at a much younger stage. There's also a desire to develop initial teacher training in partnership, and also to afford better, really, continuous professional development opportunities for school-based staff. And finally, the intention was that we would ensure apprenticeships and work-based learning would align to the future skills need of the Swansea Bay City Deal area. Since that inception, obviously the membership of the partnership in terms of who should attend from each partner, each strategic partner, has been pretty constant, but the membership of actually who attends at any given time has changed quite a lot during the 2.5 years that it's been since it was created. And because of that change of membership, there has been at times a little bit of a loss of momentum. We have to be very honest here and say we haven't always kept the momentum and the ambition that was there right at the start. But what the partnership managed to do successfully was that it drilled down on key focus areas that it would develop together during the next few years. So those 2 focus areas were to build digital capacity, and that means in our workforce, with our partners, and indeed building the capacity, not just in terms of workforce development, but also in terms of infrastructure in our schools in particular. So there was a key desire to focus really on digital capacity. And then the other key area of focus was the good quality advice and guidance for careers, future occupations that were very much linked with the area where we live and work. As the group has evolved, the partnership, which is a strategic board, as it's evolved, there have been further opportunities that have been presented to us because of COVID. So, for example, the way we learn through digital mechanisms, those have been explored through the partnership as well. But indeed, we need to focus our minds on further work in terms of the integrity, really, of the original intentions. Do we still need to go back to that list of purposes and examine them again and focus in other areas? But indeed, the Swansea Skill Partnership is now considering having a subgroup again, potentially to look at the NEETs agenda in terms of the NEETs prevention agenda. So the group, in all honesty, has evolved, but it has gained traction despite disruption of COVID, despite changes of the chair. There has been a degree of traction, and I am hoping really that partners who have come here today will be able to share really the successes. So in terms of the outcomes, and this is the final slide from me, the key gains that have been made really are around working on that building digital capacity theme, and also the advice and guidance for careers, next steps in learning, and future occupations. And in essence, the group, by working together, has raised really awareness of some of the work of the Swansea Bay City Deal in terms of its aspirations. So that's it from me in terms of presentation. But I would like to invite Nick Brazil from Gower College really to take over the baton in terms of what the partnership has meant for him, if that's okay with you, Nick.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine, Helen. So thanks, Helen, for that summary. And I think Helen summed it up quite nicely that obviously the group started a couple of years ago. I think started with all the best intentions, and because of a number of changes, it sort of did lose momentum. And you know, I got to admit, I brought to the table a couple of times that we had to sort of focus our attentions on a couple of projects, and I think the digital was an obvious one because it obviously links in to you know, it's quite ironic really with everything that's happened over the last year. but also linked in obviously to the City Deal projects, where digital is obviously like a golden thread throughout those projects. So I think that was an obvious one. I'm sure Chris will be able to highlight the work that's gone on in that working party. The same with careers as well, the focus on providing that advice and guidance to learners, because it was something that came up in every meeting I went to, that there was a concern. I know Councillor Rayner brought that up a number of times, the issue of making sure that everybody had the right advice and guidance to make the right choices. So it's also allowed us, I think, having those two focuses to access different elements of funding as well. So, for example, we were able to get some funding for David to work on the My Choice platform, which he's, has done a tremendous job with, which is now obviously providing advice and guidance opportunities across Swansea. So, David, I'm sure we'll talk about that. But also, I suppose, as Helen said at the end, it's probably a time to think about what next, because I think now with COVID, okay, we've obviously going through it, and we're still going through it, and then it's what happens at the end of this. And I think the working groups are a great starting point, but maybe, as Helen said, NEETs now comes on, and maybe there is an opportunity to maybe have another working group as well to keep the momentum going. But I think if we keep to key topic areas, I think it shows what we've achieved. And I said, I'm sure Chris and David will be able to highlight those successes. And the good thing is, it has involved all partners, whether it's schools, colleges, universities, everybody's been involved. And I think it showed what we can achieve. I think that we can achieve a lot more as well. And I think it's the starting point. And maybe COVID will kick us on into a few other areas. I've just been on a call now about sustainability with the Welsh Government, which is a key focus for things when COVID is over. So there's opportunities there, which obviously link into the City Deal as well. So that's my sort of coverage of it all, Helen. So I'm sure you'll probably want to bring in others as well.
Thanks, Nick. If I hand over to Dave Borden now, who has been instrumental in our work around advice on careers and future steps. And he has developed, as Nick said, a platform which is unique to Wales in terms of signposting of learners for their next steps in learning. So Dave, hoping you're there to hand over the baton to.
Thank you, Helen, and thank you for inviting me to talk this afternoon. Yes, so one of the subgroups or smaller groups we looked at was advice and guidance for learners who are perhaps particularly interested in vocational pathways. And one gap that we sort of recognised within the system was that there was not one place where a Year 11 learner or a school leaver could go to find out where all the opportunities were. So what we wanted to do, and we were delighted to have through the work of the group gain a grant to do this, was to develop a web-based platform that was impartial and unbiased and showed all our opportunities. So that would be the opportunities that school leavers could have in their sixth forms, in the colleges, through work-based learning providers, through apprenticeships, through traineeships, and for the whole range. And I wonder if very quickly I could just show you or share my screen so that you could just have a little look and become familiar with what the web platform looks like. So can you see that screen, everyone? I'm sure you can. Brilliant. So so the My Choice website looks like this. This is available for all 14 of our secondary schools, and this is where schools can gain impartial advice and guidance and look at the post-16 options that are available to them. It includes a common application form for our sixth forms and also links to our college application forms as well. And if I scroll down very quickly, you can see the options here under sixth forms, colleges, work-based learning, for example. So under sixth forms, our sixth forms have developed a very strong range of resources that learners can see and access to see what opportunities they have next. We have our colleges here, and then we have work-based learning as well. But what we're particularly excited about is on this website, we were able to develop an area after, I think, a previous PDC meeting where there was a focus looking at employment. We've developed this area where learners and schools can click on here, and with partnership with the Learning and Skills Partnership and our partners across the college and Careers Wales, we've developed 6 areas which will be seeing growth or is expected to see growth in the area. And learners can click on here to see what's happening in Swansea, what the growth is, what we're expecting over the next few years, and links to other websites that they can use to find out a little bit more about industries like construction, for example. So there's also an opportunity to see where all the open evenings are across the city and our surrounding cities as well, and links to help and advice from Careers Wales. Not wanting to sort of go through that too much more. Have I stopped sharing my screen? I think so. It's been a really exciting project. It's been a real labour of love, really, getting different partners together to provide the information and the resources that we need to host that on one website. I had a very interesting meeting last week with Welsh Government, who were looking at this platform and seeing how perhaps that platform can be shared as good practice in other local authorities to pull together the opportunities that we have and are out there and put them all in one place. It's been a real strength of Swansea Skills Partnership, I think, to allow that to happen, to gain the grant and for it to be developed, and also to talk with our partners and to get it all there together. We've done all sorts of different elements to it. We've had a group of learners look at it to get the learner voice element, to see how accessible they think it is. We've talked to our school teachers, talked to our colleges, we've talked to Careers Wales, Regional Learning Skills Partnership. So we've had a wide range of partners involved, and as time develops, we're able to develop this website a lot more and add more to it, take bits out of it, and it's a real local sort of grassroots development where we listen to what teachers are wanting and what school children are wanting and what the colleges are wanting, and adapting as we're moving along as well. So we're delighted that that's been something that we've been able to develop through the Skills Partnership.
Thank you, Dave. Key success there. If I bring Chris Rees in next before we open it up to other partners to come into the discussion. So Chris, can you give us a whistle-stop tour of your building digital capacity workstream?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. So I'm just going to run through what we as a group decided almost 2 years ago now, or at least 18 months ago, about what we thought digital capacity and what we should be doing to improve digital capacity. So a few key areas and where we've gone forward with this, the perception of digital education, and obviously the perception of digital education has completely changed over the last 9 months. It's now something that is a must. It's not a tool which is maybe kept in a cupboard. It's a must, and all of our schools, fortunately, were ready to go with a digital solution and have run with it over the last 6 to 9 months. So we looked at that, but we also looked at what type of our children are going into these digital careers. Because in the City Bay area, we noticed that we were going to have an influx of digital jobs. So we looked at those. We also looked through opportunities through employer engagement. We were fortunate enough to have a small grant so that we can take some learners down to our digital arena, hopefully in the new year, if things get a little bit better, to have a look at the jobs and the opportunities, including construction and other industries that we can fit into that digital aspect of it. We also looked at digital work-based learning, so the idea that people can improve their digital skills in work, and we managed to get, with the help of Gower College, we managed to get an apprenticeship for our teachers. So about 60 of our teachers are actually on an apprenticeship to improve their digital skills, and that's been brilliant throughout this time. And they're still on it at the moment. I think we've had about 15 that have passed through that apprenticeship scheme. I think we've got another about 30 or 40 that are in the middle of it at the moment. And that brings me on to my last part, which is that continued professional development. And I know I met with Nick and Anna recently about the professional development that's gone ahead in college and in university, about how teachers are teaching using these devices. And it's most important now is what pedagogy goes behind it. It's not just the device, it's how we use that device to actually still manage to teach and get through the curriculum, through the courses. So again, whistle-stop tour of what we looked at, and things are flying along with it. And I'm happy to take any questions that you see fit.
Great, thanks. Thank you, and thank you, Helen. Can we open it up to some questions. We've set some questions, but if I could sort of say, kick off by saying that being a member of the Policy Development Education Committee, I'm sure Councillor Robert Smith would like to come in. One of the thoughts behind sort of developing this area was the fact that we were having the city deal, and it was really important that children in Swansea, pupils in Swansea, would be able to get those top jobs, and that we wouldn't end up by having the city deal and we wouldn't have the right skills, and people would have to be brought into Swansea to take those jobs, and we want children here to actually enjoy them and take them up. So that was the background to it. The other thing I might say is you mentioned NEETs, and in fact this panel went to visit Pwrpas School to look at NEETs prevention, and I have to say, and I think all the members of the panel would agree, it was a great example of what could and is being done at actually ensuring that children get the best education, and I see education as a journey into work. And they certainly did, because they were working with business and they were helping with their CVs. And I know we were all impressed, and we did actually write to the school afterwards to say that. So I think that's important. The final two things I'd say is a really good platform, David. Excellent work there. And to Chris, digital, gosh, very fortuitous, because when we actually, we didn't realise that we might be using it a bit since March. And I think without that, we would be in big trouble. And I'm impressed the teachers are prepared to go on apprenticeships, because not everybody likes to do that. When you're stuck in a job and you're doing it and you say, well, I know it all, I've been doing it for 30 years or 20 years, but it's really good news that teachers are prepared to actually go in and actually take those apprenticeships and learn more about that, because one thing for certain, children in schools very often know more than we do, and I think it's really important that everybody's brought up to speed. So having said all that, Robert, would you like to, Councillor Robert Smith, come in to say about how the base of this was?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation to the meeting as well, because hearing some of the work that's been going on, that is spot on what I think the committee, the PDC, had in mind when it recommended that this be set up. It was a way of putting a local focus on the skills agenda, bringing people together, and a way of delivering the kind of projects which you've described on the website there. Is a great example of the type of thing we wanted to see. It's identifying the skill needs, it's identifying how that will evolve in future, and making sure that the provision and the curriculum and the skills provision is aligned to future skills needs, and enables all our youngsters, not just certain groups, to fulfill their potential. Because when we talked about vocational education, all learners at some point in their lives will want to seek employment, or the vast majority will want to enter the workplace. So a vocational element should be part of every child's experience, was our thinking. And I think what you've shown us there is going a long way to achieving that. So thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Robert. We've got there are a couple of questions here, then we'll open it up to any questions. And the first one that the panel put together was, how effective do you feel the partnership is currently? Helen or anyone?
Yeah. So as chair, it's probably not the right person to ask. So I'm happy for any member within the partnership who's present here in the scrutiny panel to actually answer that question.
Don't be shy.
Can I come in here?
Yeah, go on. Absolutely.
I think it's very useful, because it's a very open and sometimes blunt, if it has to be, conversation amongst people who are contributing. Every member of the panel is a member of an organisation which is moving along at a fast rate in its own development way. And I think it's been really good hearing what is happening, in the different universities, the different colleges. Certainly, I'd like to bring in at some point Beth Titley of Careers Wales, because they have changed their way of working before COVID, but increasingly so. So I think we are more and more homing in particular as we look at NEETs, on targeting this issue of employment into employment. The previous work on NEETs tended to bury things in a general well-being family support system, which is certainly absolutely necessary. But what we're learning moving down the school ages, not just 14 and above, but below 14, it's really important that youngsters get an insight into the world of work and the different occupations. And for our primary schools, the use of the Band B, construction sites and the companies who have had to develop education programmes has been really useful, because we are aware that many young people are not over keen on sitting in a classroom forever. They want this blend of hands-on learning and support for actually increasing their knowledge, their literacy, their math skills, their technical knowledge, to take them into work. And I think the panel, because of the wide range of representatives, has been really, really supportive of this. And also with the university and Judith James as the representative, we have had an insight into the cities of learning around the world. We've taken part in webinars and held back. So we've been able to draw down and feed into the work going on around the world on how you support cities, how you support all your people, and how you offer different employment options to everyone. So in that sense, I think it's been really successful. But I would always say, never sit on your hands. And I think Helen identified there's time for reviews, and I think Nick would go along with that. So really, really useful. But I would like also to bring in Beth, because Careers Wales, it's a national body. It's had to change its way of working. And I think it's important you hear about that, because that's sort of Welsh government driven, not us.
Okay. Beth, and then
yeah, I'm happy to come in there.
Before you start, we've got Mike Day and Miles Langston are coming in with questions. Beth, sorry to stop you in mid-flow.
No, just, going back to, my opinion of the partnership, because I can't remember exactly when I got involved, but I think that the commitment of the individuals that come to the partnership, it is about bringing knowledge, and a true sense of partnership. People are not there for whoever they represent. They want to bring to the table. That's the sort of feel I get when I come to the to the meetings, that it's all about this working together. And I know it's always said, partnership working, but I think it is, and it's been shown, with the developments Dave said, about everybody that was involved with what he was, with the website, and that's certainly what I get the sense of when we have the meetings. It is that true sense of partnership and wanting to move forward. And I know that Jen did quote me in one of the newsletters that went out, but just to say as well that during the COVID period, the schools in Swansea, because I cover 6 local authorities in the West region and Pwrpas, and it was very varied on how Careers Wales was thought about and brought back into schools. And I don't want to judge any school, because everybody was working to their best, but within Swansea they all welcomed us back with open arms, saw us as a member of the staff, and we were in Swansea, it was one of the first local authorities to get back all of the careers advisors in school face to face, but also delivering a blended service as well with online interviewing, which the schools had to help us to put in place. So again, I just wanted to say thank you to the commitment of the schools in working with Careers Wales. And we're also coming, our current sort of vision is called Changing Lives, which is just coming to an end in March 2021. And we'll be launching our new vision, 5-year vision, called Brighter Futures. So it's only with the Minister at the moment for approval. So when I've got, you know, it's all firmed up, I'll be able to, you know, do a short presentation or share, you know, with the partnership, you know, how we want to move going forward. But again, we had feedback from local authorities, from parents, from pupils to help shape that vision going forward.
Okay, Councillor Mike Day.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I express, I'm sure on behalf of everybody, our thanks to colleagues in education and those who've been providing education services under such extreme circumstances. So, you know, and I hope that you all managed to have a bit of a break over the Christmas period, and I'm sure we're all looking forward to a much healthier and happier new year. So if you would mind doing that. It's delightful to hear of the initiative which is bringing everyone together. And, you know, at the core of this must be the provision of opportunities for our children and young people in Swansea, rather than, you know, the needs or desires of individual organisations. And from what I've heard, I've been very encouraged by the way in which it seems to be working together. I suppose there's a two-part question I've got. The first would be that one of the things that I've been concerned about in the past is the proliferation of different partnerships. And I wondered whether there are any kind of overlaps that people would identify between the organisations who are represented in the Swansea Skills Partnership, which could be examined in terms of whether they still have a future, if they have a role, and whether there's a danger of colleagues who are being brought into meetings where they're meeting the same group of people to talk more or less about the same sorts of things. So that would be the first one, and I suppose that would be linked then to the second question, which the chair has already referred to. The questions that we've put is just of developing that idea of how would you like to see the partnership improve. What are the areas that you would like to see tackled? And I suppose in a sense, you know, we're thinking about some of the lessons that might have been learned from Eru. Just thinking in terms of the way in which we're able to ensure that the negative elements of that can be turned over to become positives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Who would like to?
I'm happy to start a response on that one, Chair, if that's okay. So in answer to your first question, Councillor Day, in terms of overlap and opportunities, there are certain linkages that are very obvious. So the Regional Learning and Skills Partnership is one. And I would say it is more of an overlap rather than a duplication. There are similar members, but they're not all the same. And the links there have been favourable, really, to Swansea to keep presence of that partnership, but also to bring some learning back from that partnership into this current partnership. I wouldn't describe it as duplication. I think there's benefits for having both. And obviously the other regional partnership is the education improvement one, the school improvement one in Eru. And much of the work around curriculum development, around curriculum reform is beneficial really in terms of the skills agenda and the employability agenda, and also the building digital capacity. We do consider that we have key partners within Eru that can benefit Swansea as well. So it's not to maybe look at the bad parts of Eru, but try and focus on the goodness, because there is some goodness really in terms of the curriculum development. We know that the professional learning offer from our region, from Eru, for the new curriculum reform is of good quality. That's something we wouldn't want to disregard. And I think as well, Chris Rees possibly would disagree with me, but he might agree with me. But you know that there are some benefits of having some regional programs around opportunities, for example, around coding, clubs, professional learning for the profession that have been afforded by the region as well. So our local educators and our learners here in Swansea have benefited from both camps, really. And certainly I would describe it as a helpful overlap rather than interference or a duplication. And in terms of lessons learned from other regional partners, I think, to quote Councillor Rayner, she's always said that a good partnership is based on trust and data. And I think it's really important that we use our information locally to inform our planning locally. And that's the best use of data we can do. And I think this partnership here today has demonstrated that it's used information wisely to plan a better future for our youngsters here. And also in terms of improving on the trust front, as Beth has attested to, really, we are very much here for the benefit of children and young people in Swansea, and we're not interested really in our personal gains as organisations. And I think that trust is implicit within this partnership. And I'd very much be interested in hearing if somebody thinks otherwise. But I feel that people are within a position of trusting each other within this partnership.
Thank you, Helen.
Right.
Is it possible to maybe hear from one or two of the others in the partnership?
Sure. No, don't be shy. Don't worry. I think Helen has sort of covered it. But thanks, Helen.
There are hands up, Chair. We've got hands up.
I've got.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, there is. Yes, David. Sorry, there are. I was going to come in next with a question with Mike, with Miles. But David, David Bowden, would you like to come in to answer Mike's question?
You're muted.
David, you're muted, David.
Apologies. I should know better by now, shouldn't I? Yeah, I was just going to just add very, very briefly, just to say that the partnership has worked very well with some of our partners outside of the local authority as well. So we've got learners that are that, for example, are in schools like Birchgrove and Kevin Hengoyd that might attend Neath Port Talbot College, and likewise we've got learners on the other side of Swansea that might attend Coleg Cigar. So it's been a very strong partnership where we've been able to cross the border as well and include a wider range of partners that may sit just outside of our local authority as a whole. So the benefit is to all our learners within the Swansea region, whether they continue to study within Swansea or just outside of our borders. That was just the extra comment I was going to add.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Nick Brazil.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate actually what Helen said earlier on, a couple of the colleagues, and what David just said, I think it is a mature partnership. I think Swansea is gaining from it because of the maturity, because we are, as David said, other organisations outside the county which is helping learners. I wish it was the same for other counties with us. We have within the college a number of learners who come from outside. We wish we were able to influence and be invited, and I think it shows the maturity of this group that we can actually work together for the whole part of the region. And I think, when David said, Welsh Government are looking at our platform for rolling out, maybe they should look at how this partnership is working and how that could be sort of rolled out to the rest of Wales, because we certainly see it that this area is making some great strides, which should be utilised as good practice elsewhere.
Great, thank you. Councillor Miles Langston.
Thank you. So first of all, just want to echo Mike's comments around those working in education for everything that they've done over the last month since March, which has been the most difficult circumstances. So long time, and we all appreciate everything that you've been doing to get us through this. Also, thank you to everybody who's joined the call for the information you provided. David, it's great to hear of the My Choice. I think that's really positive. It's sort of moving in the right direction, identifying those opportunities that are available, and trying to sort of fit what we're trying to achieve here. And obviously, Chris as well, with the digital arena visits and things like that. I'm part of the PDC that's sort of pushed this partnership forward. I fully advocate and support the ambition behind trying to maximise the opportunities from the city deal and making sure that our sort of our pupils locally are fully getting the best opportunity to take advantage of those. Obviously, I can see the composition of the partnership, and my question is, with trying to get the best out of this, obviously business involvement is a key aspect to that, and it's what's the drive, what's the sort of next step in terms of getting formal business engagement on this partnership, and making sure that those that are going to be the employers, that are seeing what skills they want to get from children leaving schools, what role are they going to play in actually being on the partnership group. I think that we hear a lot about employers saying, well, we want these sorts of skills from pupils, we want them to have these qualifications. Well, having them as a formal part of this partnership is going to be vital in making sure that pupils and schools are aware of exactly what they're looking for. So it's just what is the next step, and make sure there's actual business involvement from those who will be employing on this partnership.
Great, thanks, Miles. Who would like to take that one?
I'm happy to pick this one up. This has always been a bit of a critical question, and I know it comes up a lot in the Regional Skills and Learning Board as well, and I've watched it ping pong between the colleges and the employers in a rather artificial who has got the most say here. What I think the strength is in Swansea and with our partners like Careers Wales is they very much have their fingers on the pulse here. What are the employment opportunities? All the colleges have some really good links directly with employers in setting up traineeships and apprenticeships, and at very base level that is really important. So always happy to have them on board, but I am aware that we have possibly 5 partners who are in the partnership for whom that is a very strong area of their work. They are taking it across a whole range of areas, whereas often when we've had employers' representatives on board, they have been looking at it very much in terms of their own form of employment, whether it's hospitality, manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, rather than looking at a large range of broad skills which can be used across several employment opportunities. And I think that's what we're aiming for: flexibility, good quality, and skills which will move. If somebody chooses to change their job, if somebody loses the job and has to find something else, they have to be multi-skilled and able to market themselves. So hear what you're saying, Miles. It's a very good point. It is finding employers that have that broader perception of what employment and skills is about. And so far, I think the colleges and the universities, some of our schools, are ahead on that game.
Yeah. Robert, you've got your hand up. Or is it?
Yes, I mean, and again, you know, the more I've listened to the discussion, the happier I've become really with what's coming from what the PDC suggested. But I think what's important, and I get this feeling now, is that this is a dynamic, ever-changing partnership. That it's not going to be something that's going to bureaucratize what it tries to do, but it's going to respond to ever-changing needs. And you know, Jen mentioned earlier about the school curriculum. Well, you know, we've got a wonderful opportunity to link with the evolving school curriculum and make sure that answers this agenda as well as all the other agendas it needs to respond to. So it is about identifying employer needs, and that's crucial, but it's also about those generic work readiness skills that our youngsters are ready for the workplace and have the skills and the aptitudes to do that. And I think that was certainly something that came out of the PDC's discussion, that we need to nurture those generic skills for the workplace amongst our young people.
Okay, great. And we've got Chris Rees and
Yes.
then Helen Morgan Rees. Chris.
Sorry, yeah, just to come back in really on the point about employer engagement. When we set up one of the subgroups, we actually had employer engagement in, especially in the digital one. I looked at some of the main employers around the Swansea area. So we had DVLA come in, we had Admiral come in, we also had Tata Steel come in. And it was quite refreshing really to hear what skills they actually wanted. It's always looked at when you look for somebody who wants to work in digital, it has to be that, I want to put it in a nice way, that geeky person who sits behind a computer and doesn't go anywhere. And I put my hand up, I'm probably one of those people. But the employers actually didn't want that person. And the interesting discussion with one of the main employers from Admiral, one of the main digital guys from Admiral, he was saying that they don't want the people who can do the programming before they go into the company. They want to train them up when they're there, but they want a certain set of skills so that they know that they can train them up effectively. So that's what we almost wanted to build into the partnership as well, is that idea that our children need to understand what programming is or what coding is or what they may be doing in these industries. But more importantly, this gives them the background skills, the foundation skills for them to go and learn elsewhere. So that's what we brought up in this partnership as well. And when we looked at the perception of digital, it was looking at sometimes what we call the unplugged skills. It's not sitting behind a computer, but it's making sure that they have the knowledge of what the job may entail rather than just the programming aspect of it. So we have got an employer engagement. We hope to work with them a lot more in the future as well once this pandemic is over with.
Great, thank you, Chris. Helen.
Yeah, certainly from the Regional Learning Skills Partnership meetings that I've attended, there is a degree of engagement with employers, small to medium businesses, for example. That federation has presented to the board and they were very explicit in the types of skills that they wanted to see in employees, and it was quite interesting to hear really. A lot of it is aligned to the new curriculum, but certainly the skills they were looking for were to do with punctuality, resilience, attitude, a lot of softer skills that are not kind of subject based at all, as Chris said, but certainly ones that could be developed from a very young age. Some, key disciplines really in terms of conduct, that kind of thing. So it was interesting to hear from that perspective. But it was also reciprocal in terms of those kind of businesses hearing about the new curriculum and how employability is a key feature of the new curriculum. And it might be, if Helen Burgham doesn't mind, she might want to come in on this point really, in terms of what the new curriculum can offer in terms of the future, in terms of building up those skills for employability. I don't know if Helen is still on the call.
Helen.
Hi, Helen. Yes, I am still here, but I don't know when my camera is coming on. It might be on.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point, because at the moment we are in the throes of curriculum design. Many schools are at the point of piloting or hoping to pilot in September 21 the Year 7 curriculum, and having real authentic contexts to be able to integrate the skills that they are learning about and the knowledge that they're learning about in the new curriculum is so important. And that links into the Careers Wales database as well, that has been very useful for us. So I think it's a very important point going forward, and the opportunities that this partnership can bring to that as we develop the new curriculum shouldn't be underestimated as well.
Great, thank you very much. Can I say it's quite exciting actually. I think Councillor Robert Smith mentioned, and if Councillor Miles Langston, who are on the PDC, that some of the things that we suggested are actually coming into fruition, and you can actually see that with this today. The only thing I would say though is that I do think in the from your board area, your members of the partnership, I do think you should have business representatives actually physically on that board, because it would look a bit odd. And it's something that I raised when I think, Helen, I don't think it was yourself, came to the PDC and you initially said about the composition. And I can remember saying then, I do think that we need some businesses actually on there, because obviously they know what they want and they can think across business as well. And there are some who actually work in a range of different businesses. And I think that could be a weakness. And I think if you address that, gosh, you'd be on fire. But you really, I'm really proud of the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And from what when we set up and talked about it, gosh, here we're going. But I do think that's a little bit of a weakness. And I think that's something that can quite easily be addressed.
Yeah, and I think that was a specific recommendation from the PDC, if I'm not mistaken, Chair.
Robert, it was actually, and but I think it's something that can be put right. But I am quite excited to listen to the people here to say, gosh, this is something we'd actually suggested, and here's the meat and what's actually happening moving forward, which is really good. And thinking of the digital capacity, which is vital for the future, because there are lots of work in that and well-paid jobs. Because the other thing we did say is that what we want the people in Swansea to be the managers as well, and we want them to be able to have the skills to take on those top jobs and not have to languish in lower paid jobs. And really, we want to give those children those opportunities. And it's good to see that we're putting the base in for that. So thanks. But I do think, as I say, we do need to look to get some people from the business community, and there are quite a few out there would be happy to give their time, I'm pretty sure, to help us develop education in Swansea. Could I say the next question we asked was, how engaged are individual organisations in this partnership? And I think you've answered it very well indeed, because you are engaged and very much working hard in that. And I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on that, but that was certainly what I took from what members of the partnership had to say. Anybody at all? No. Right. Well, the next point was, how is the partnership? How is the partnership progressing with its priorities as detailed in the terms of reference? And I think probably a lot of that has been covered, but does anybody want to comment on that? That's all? No? Right, okay. The other one then was some examples of activities and successes arising from the partnership. Well, I think some of those have already been covered by you, with not least in digital and the platform and dealing with needs. So that is good. But has anybody got any comments about that? But we can come to that. And the last one was, how would you like to see the partnership progress moving forward? Any comments? Yeah, we got to Helen and Nick Brazil. Helen first.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I think we need to revisit the purpose, the intention really originally of this partnership, and maybe to bring some fresh thinking into how we want to progress. As you said, Councillor Jones, it's important that we maybe consider through the regional learning and skills partners Nick suggested, that we do bring some involvement there from the world of business. So that could be a clear improvement step. Certainly to refresh our priorities is going to be the priority going forward.
Okay, great, fine, thanks very much. Any other comments from anybody and any member of the panel? Nick, sorry, Nick, you've got your hand up.
Yes,
and
thanks.
So has Mike Dirk as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, again. Yes, totally endorse your comments about employer links. I think actually we talked about in our last meeting about that and where we wanted to take that forward. So totally endorse that. I think it's just going in the right manner to get so we have the full range of employers, so we don't possibly focus on on particular one area. We cover the range within the Swansea Bay region. So that's crucial. But I think it's just about not losing momentum now. For me, that is the crucial thing, is not losing momentum. We've achieved, but I think, as I said, I used the term before, I think we can achieve more. And it's getting the right groupings or subgroupings to take key priorities forward and out of the post-COVID, hopefully sooner rather than later, the post-COVID world. And I think there's going to be a lot of work that certainly educators and a number of people are going to have to do based on obviously the employment statistics that are coming through. So people will be searching for skills, they'll be looking for new employment opportunities, and we need to be there and ready for it. So I think that's the main thing. Don't lose momentum, maybe focus on a couple of subgroup areas now over the next year to 18 months.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Mike Dirk. Mike, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did, Chair. I just want to make a comment that it's great to see the progress, really is. I was on the Policy Development Committee previously. I think next steps, I think we've got somewhere 550, 570 looked after children in Swansea at the moment. And we know that we face challenges with vulnerable learners. And they're very tough nuts to crack, I know that. But as we go forward, I'm very proud as a Cocket ward councillor that we've got the pupil referral unit built now in Cocket, and great opportunity that presents us with to really blaze a trail, to get people and their families to understand the purpose of education, to value education. And I think one of the interesting areas for me would be for us to clue up the wider workforce. You know what I mean? So if you've got a parenting worker or a social worker in a challenging family situation, well, maybe planting a few seeds with mum and dad about educational opportunities is a way to go. So sharing this great practice, this horizontal integration, if you like, you know, not just preaching to the converted, but getting housing officers on board and social workers, etc., on board with the opportunities which are there. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Mike. And yes, of course, we were all members and are still members of the PDC, where we discussed this initially. Sorry, anybody else? Otherwise, could I thank everybody from the Swansea Skills Partnership? Really grateful and well done for what you're doing. And we can see a map for the future with the business as well involved, I hope. But great, thank you very much indeed for the work that you've been doing. We're very grateful, and it is for me very exciting to see something that we've talked about actually come into fruition and actually doing a really good job as well. So thank you very much. You can stay on the call now if you like, or you can disappear. We won't think any worse of you, but you're very welcome to stay. The next item on the agenda is really important, and it's a verbal update on the COVID Education Recovery Plan. And we invited Jen, the Cabinet Member for Education, and Helen Morgan-Rees, who are going to contribute, I believe, to that.
Yes, is my microphone working?
It is.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, it's been a busy week in terms of education and COVID, and no matter how much we felt we recovered during the bulk of the autumn term, the end of term brought us to a position which was untenable, really, where we had a ministerial directive to close or ask our schools in the secondary sector to go to remote learning, and we felt it was the right thing to do for our primary sector as well. And this happened last Thursday. So it's very important that you have that update. And the move to primary, going to a remote blended learning is quite a difficult concept, because obviously the older you are, the easier it is for self-directed learning to take place. However, we felt, given the attendance levels in Swansea, they did plummet to 44% by last Friday, and had been in decline during the best part of last week. So we felt it was the right decision to do. Our work this week has been very much focused on what happens next in January. So before I move on to that bit, I'll just give you a little bit of an update in terms of the statistics and how COVID has affected our schools. So 92 of our schools have been affected out of 94 schools and providers here in Swansea. So only have 2 schools unaffected by either positive pupil cases or positive staff cases in schools. Now, a number of schools have had large numbers of cases. So without naming the school, our highest incident school has had 69 cases during the course of this term. And we have a number of schools who have cases that are above 25, okay? And then if you look at the number of schools that have had maybe less than 10 cases, they are very much in the majority. So the total number, when we consider all of this, is that we have in Swansea to date, up until today, 938 positive cases. But what we have to remember is that a number of children have had to self-isolate during this period of education. So although we've got less than 1,000 positive cases affecting our schools throughout a whole term, the disruption has been significant. And of course, that does include this week where everybody is potentially learning from a distance. So as I said, 97 of our schools have had at least one case, and an average of 10 cases per school has been evidenced. We have reports of 325 cases of staff members in school, and according to the school workforce census, it does show we have 4,367 staff, but that doesn't include our catering and cleaning and caretaking staff. So on that basis, our positivity rate within the school environment is 7.4. Now, I'm not sure where the general public positivity rate is currently, but at the last time I looked, it was about 30% positivity in general public. I know we're not comparing the same thing, but of our workforce, 7.4 have been affected. So it's less than 10% affected across the whole term. So we've had 610 pupil cases across our year groups, and I've asked for that information to focus on statutory age only, and that's equivalent to 1.7% of our pupils across Swansea being affected by being identified as positive in terms of COVID. So that's quite a low kind of percentage, really. In terms of attendance, as I said, there was a massive dip at the end of last week and during the course of last week. But of course, we've seen other dips as well affected by the fire break during the end of October and the early part of November. So during the best part of the term, attendance was in the high 80s, where we would expect to see it in the low 90s. So potentially 5 percentage points below where we would normally be in the autumn term. So that's it in terms of the statistics. Turning now to the start of the new academic year in January, the new term, I should say. It does feel like the start of a new academic year, actually, but it's the start of a new term. We have been issued with a statement from the Welsh Local Government Association and Welsh Government this afternoon, and we've met with our head teachers this morning to say clearly that school does start on the 4th of January. The expectation in Swansea is that we will offer face-to-face learning to the best of our ability. Now that means that some schools on the 4th of January, notwithstanding if they've got an inset day, they may have an inset day, but they will, if they can, I've asked our schools if they can to offer face-to-face learning from the start of term, which is the 4th of January. Now, that's not going to be possible in every school in Swansea. You will have normal kind of attendance possibly in a few schools, very few, I should imagine. You may have reduced operations in other schools in Swansea during the first week back, and you may even have a whole school switching to remote learning once again during that first week back. So I think the second week back, it'll be a mixed bag. And I think it's very difficult to tell parents today or even tomorrow what to expect. So I'm not in a position to write to the parents in Swansea today or tomorrow to tell them what to expect, because it will depend on the transmission, it will depend on the virus, and it's only at the start of term really that we will understand fully how each and every school in Swansea will be affected. But our determinant really is that the capacity of a school to operate safely will determine how education will look during the first weeks back and onwards during the term. So it's our consistent principle. We will risk assess our safe operations based on safe staffing levels.
Great, thank you, Helen. Could I ask Councillor Steve Gallagher to come in? He's got his hand up, and then Councillor Jen Rayner.
Yeah, thank you, Lyndon. Hi, Helen.
Hi.
It's interesting to listen to you and describing certain schools that have got a very high incidence rate as against others. Now, bearing in mind, obviously, we've got a new, well, it does feel like a new year coming up, I think, a new term starting. Is there anything we can learn possibly from how those schools may have been operating or working during this pandemic that have caused the incident rate to be high? Or is it just purely that the incident rates are high? Because if there is something that we can learn from them and, you know, put in place, obviously, for next year to prevent, and without knowing the background of those schools or where they are or possibly how it's happening, it's difficult for us to comment, but I'm sure it's something that you need to perhaps look at. Thank you, Lyndon.
Yeah, the key, I think, is community transmission, is reducing that, because that is what is causing the high numbers in schools. So any activity that spreads the virus within the school population but out in the community is key that we reduce that. Also, the isolation of year groups in our large comprehensive schools, obviously that that is something that we need to look at in terms of, can we look at alternative ways of zoning our schools differently? What I want to reassure you on is that our schools are as COVID safe as we can make them. And of course we won't rest on our laurels. We will keep checking that we're implementing our plans effectively. But I think, you know, although we've got high incidence in some schools, it's not reflective of schools' operations. It's more reflective of what's happening in terms of behaviour in the community. And that is very, very difficult to police on many fronts.
Yes, totally agree with you there. But,
Yeah.
you know, it might be something that we can learn, and if necessary, you know, send a message out that this is affecting your education. This is affecting children's education because of what you're doing elsewhere, even though it's not school education responsibility. It is one that could help us. And yes, I've had the first-hand experience of my son actually testing positive and having to stay off, and that was a bind, trust me. And he's a teacher.
The other element in answer to that as well is that we work in partnership with Public Health Wales.
Yes.
So they are very good in informing us if they've got any concerns around the patterns of what they're observing in our schools. And they've arranged, only in one case, I can't name the school, an incident management team meeting to just unpack very carefully really what the reasons are for the high incidence. So they are very helpful partners in helping us understand and learn. And in some cases there are behaviours, for example, on a bus route that could have been improved. And that kind of thing then has been put into place very successfully. So we've worked with our partners to try and learn lessons along the way, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Helen.
Great, thank you. Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. On the following on from the question Steve just asked, I think it's important to note that the top 7 schools in terms of numbers of positive cases, they have all been our secondary schools, which are larger. The primary schools, most of them are in single figures, and there are a few in double figures. And they tend to be quite large primary schools as well. So it reflects what's going on in the authority in the terms of the general community infection rate, but much lower in our schools. I think what we need to bear in mind that before the minister got up and made her announcements last Thursday afternoon, Swansea was already in a position, because of staff shortages, not necessarily infections, but because staff had been asked to isolate because they'd been near somebody, of having to accept the closure of 2 secondary schools and 4 primary schools. And Helen has rightly said that when we open in January, it will be very much dependent on available staff to provide safe cover in addition to a good learning experience in the schools. So it is an important message we need to get out that schools are safe, and it's community infection which is driving. But of course, for the public and for families, what they have experienced is whole classes, whole year groups coming out. And of course, quite rightly, no one is told for definite how many pupils in that number have actually got a positive test, because we don't want any finger pointing or bullying or anything. But the impact of having to send home whole year groups and whole classes has been quite distressing for families and our learners. So when we do go back and do offer teaching and learning, if any school can come up with a better way of zoning or operating, and I think one school has already, well, 2 schools have seriously considered part of the week in, part of the week out for some of its higher classes, then we will need to look at that in order to minimise the actual disruption to pupils and their families of having to work from home. But I am very pleased with the fact that across the entire school estate, the number of infections for children in particular is really, really low.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you. Councillor Susan Jones.
Thank you, Lyndon. I just wondered if it was an opportunity for pupils who are accessing the community in the school day to be restricted if the community is where the infections are and not the school. Surely it makes sense to keep pupils onto the school premises.
Yeah, do you want me to come in on that? I think the whole set of rules around the public and the school rules around coronavirus are very different, and one of them is social distancing. So obviously when school pupils are in school, they're not required to be at a social distance, and very often that translates then when they're out in the community, where you would normally expect to see adults or youngsters keeping away from each other, and it does give the perception really that they are transmitting, and it's a difficult one. And I know, Councillor Jones, that we've corresponded on this matter, haven't we? And we've tried to support really some worries in the community that you serve, from your ward, really from their perspective, and hopefully, you know, those concerns have died down a little bit by now.
The concerns have died down, but if the pupil infection rates are great within that our area, it makes sense to me to keep them onto the school grounds, you know. Because you say social distancing, well, I've witnessed that they don't socially distance from members of the community, let alone each other.
I mean, Obviously, I can't comment on individual school policies around what happens during the lunch hour in particular. But what I would say is obviously they are outside, they're not congregating inside anywhere. So, you know, the real danger if they were to congregate inside and cut across, you know, the lives of our most vulnerable in society, which they're not doing. They are outside and it's permissible that they don't have to be at a social distance. But I guess it provides the wrong perception, really, that they are out and about. You know, everybody can transmit the virus, and I don't think we can identify one group above another that should be penalised. It's down to everybody's kind of individual responsibility to try and maintain safe distances, particularly from those in the community that are vulnerable.
Great, thank you. We've got Councillor Steve Gallagher. Steve, you've got your hand set up,
sorry.
or is it
No,
historic? We've got Councillor Cyril Anderson. Cyril.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Ellen. I've got a lot of respect for all our hardworking teachers over this tough time. But can you, my next door neighbour's son, he was told to isolate, and only one in the class had it. Is there any way of trying to work to keep the ones that are not infected in school and just isolate the ones that are infected? Because he had to stay home 14 days.
Yeah, well, there is a proposal, isn't there, to introduce lateral flow testing, and lateral flow testing in schools. It's just a proposal at the moment. We've got no detail around this, but that would support that kind of approach, really, in terms, it's almost like a pregnancy test. It's a very easy, quick and easy test, isn't it, to undertake, and that would support really having fewer pupils isolating. But the practicalities and logistics of implementing lateral flow testing in schools is significant and a bit worrying when you look into it. I think we would need a far better timeline and runway into it. My personal belief is that we should be looking at vaccinating particularly the workforce in schools, and we should be lobbying on that front to get our school workforce, our teachers and our head teachers vaccinated, because they support really the other critical workers, don't they? And I think it's far better use of energy to focus on vaccination of school staff than trying to test pupils. But I do appreciate your point about the current policy of Welsh Government is that year groups are asked to self-isolate. That is the policy in terms of how we operate currently, but it does mean that there's repeated isolation potentially and repeated disruption, and it does seem unfair, but that's the current policy.
Okay, thank you, Ellen.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions to either Jen or Helen? If not, we'll move on. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the work programme. We've made some changes at the request of Helen, because I'm sure you all appreciate the work, and we've all mentioned it, the work that's going on in schools, and to actually organise virtual school visits at the moment would be not the right thing to do, because we want them to concentrate on what they have to do to keep the schools open. So we've moved on the visit to the meeting with Penrail and Morriston, and also there's pressure. We've got to recognise a lot of pressure on Helen and her team, a small team in the department as well. So what we've suggested is that we have a verbal update, not a written update, on education in schools in January, so we can see how schools have gone back. And rather than ask for a written report, which all takes time and people are spending hours putting it together, we'll get that verbal report, but it will be totally up to date then when we receive that. And obviously in February, the annual budget as well. So we've made those slight changes, and then we need to factor the schools in later on. I hope that's acceptable to everyone. Great, thank you. Councillor Rayner. Jen, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Lyndon, for being so understanding on this matter. This is a stressful time for schools and for the very small number of staff we have in the education department. And already we have offered, if that's the right word, staff to go and join TTP teams. There is a general requirement across the whole authority to have people willing to move into other areas of work. And as we go into lockdown, we will be again having to service big areas of support for feeding, supporting all sorts of members of the community with different problems. And every department of the authority plays its part in that. No one is protected, and I'm pleased to say nearly every member of staff of Swansea Council will volunteer for additional work over and above their departmental requirements. So if we can take this pressure off them, I would be very grateful, and thank you for giving this due consideration.
Good, thank you. No, it is important that we give the schools the maximum support we can, because they are doing a good job under difficult circumstances, and of course they've had the biggest learning curve of their lives in the last 9 months as well. So you know, you know, we want to help in that way. Next item on the agenda is for information is the annual audit of schools. I don't know if anybody's got any comment, but it's really a matter for information. And finally, no hands up. Finally, it's the our next meeting is on Thursday, the 21st of January, at 4 o'clock. So obviously we'll be sending out details before that. Could I finally thank Michelle for all the work and her help in getting all the background work, you know, to us, and also to both Jen and Helen for joining us. And I'm pleased Councillor Robert Smith as well, because it's very good to see him in this forum. So delighted to see him. And could I wish you all a very Merry Christmas. It'll be a different Christmas for us all, but keep safe, and I look forward to seeing you in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Lyndon.
Thank you.
Take care all.
Take care. Bye.